The city was winding down for the night. Storefronts flickered their closed signs on. The rush of traffic began to slow, and people hurried home with bags of groceries and takeaway containers. But for Lily and her dog Max, there was no home to return to, only a park bench near the bus station and the hope of something warm to eat. Lily had only been on the streets for a few months, but she had already learned how invisible someone could become when they had no address, no clean clothes, and no adults looking out for them. But Max made it bearable. He was more than a dog. He was her protector, her heater on cold nights, and the only soul who never left her side. Tonight, her hunger gnawed at her more fiercely than usual. She had skipped the shelter's sandwich line to stay with Max, since pets weren't allowed. That meant dinner was up to her. She knew about the diner on 3rd Street. Officers from the precinct often stopped there for their meals during evening shifts. If she was lucky, maybe someone would have food they didn't finish. As the sky darkened, she approached the diner window. Warm light poured through the glass, and inside she saw 2 police officers, one older with silver streaks in his hair, and one younger, smiling as he scrolled through his phone. Their plates were full, their coffee steaming. She hesitated. Approaching officers was risky. But desperation outweighed fear. She stepped forward, Max trailing behind. The bell over the door jingled when Officer Daniels stepped outside. "Are you lost?" he asked, his voice more curious than suspicious. Lily's lips moved before she could think. "Do you have any leftovers, sir?" The moment hung in the air like breath in winter. Daniels looked at her, really looked at her. For the first time, her eyes were large and hollow, and her hands were wrapped in a blanket so thin it barely counted as clothing. Behind her, Max wagged his tail once, then sat obediently. "Wait here," Daniels said. He went back inside. Lopez looked at him, puzzled, but said nothing as Daniels returned with 2 to-go boxes and a bottle of water. He handed them to Lily without a word. She took them as if they were treasure, mumbling a soft thank you as her eyes shimmered. Then she opened the box carefully, sitting on the edge of the curb. The first thing she did was pull out a piece of chicken and place it in front of Max. He waited for her to nod, then began eating. Only then did she take a bite for herself. "Officer." Daniels watched from a few feet away, his arms crossed, his heart heavier than he expected. She was just a child who fed her dog before herself. He knelt beside her again. "What's your name?" Lily hesitated, then answered, "Lily. And your friend?" "Max," she said with a small smile, "the first one of the night. He's a good dog. He's my best friend." Daniels didn't ask too much more. He knew better than to push too fast. He could see in her eyes the fear of being separated from the only one she trusted. He remembered cases like this, ones where good intentions drove children deeper into hiding. So he stayed quiet. Sat with her a while. Let her eat in peace. Lopez eventually joined them too, offering Max a piece of his bread. And there they were, 2 officers in uniform, a homeless girl, and her dog, all sharing food under a city streetlight. As they parted ways, Daniels called out, "Lily, if you ever need anything, come by the precinct, ask for me." She didn't respond. She just gave a cautious nod, gathered the empty box, and walked off with Max close behind. But Daniels didn't stop watching until she turned the corner. He didn't know it yet, but that brief exchange was the beginning of something that would change not just Lily's life, but his as well. The next morning, Officer Daniels sat in his patrol car sipping lukewarm coffee, but his mind wasn't on the radio chatter or the streets he'd driven for over 20 years. He kept thinking about the girl, Lily, the way she held her dog close, the way she fed him before eating, herself, and how quickly she disappeared into the night. Something about her stayed with him. He had seen a lot during his years on the force, but this was different. This wasn't just another lost kid. This was someone holding on to hope by a single thread, and that thread had fur and a wagging tail. Daniels pulled into the precinct and walked straight to his desk. His partner, Officer Lopez, raised an eyebrow. "Still thinking about the kid, huh?" Daniels nodded slowly. "She didn't ask for money. Didn't ask for a place to sleep. Just leftovers." "That says a lot," Lopez replied. "You gonna report it to Child Services?" Daniels paused. He knew the rules. A homeless minor should be reported immediately. But he also knew what that meant for Lily, a system that didn't allow dogs in foster homes. a system she had probably already tried to escape. Not yet, he finally said. I want to do this differently. Lopez leaned back in his chair. Just be careful. Not everyone wants help, even when they need it. Meanwhile, across town, Lily and Max rested under a footbridge in the city park. It wasn't comfortable, but it was quiet and hidden. She shared the rest of the leftovers with Max and let him drink from the plastic bowl she carried in her bag. Her stomach was fuller than it had been in days, but her heart was heavy. Officer Daniels seemed kind, but she had learned not to trust kindness too quickly. It often came with conditions, and she refused to be separated from Max. As the afternoon sun filtered through the trees, Lily pulled a crumpled notebook from her backpack. The pages were wrinkled and stained, but they were filled with little drawings, sketches of Max sleeping, of the city skyline, and of a house she imagined in her dreams. She drew quietly, her hand moving without much thought. She had no one to talk to, so the drawings became her way of speaking to the world. Back at the precinct, Daniels had an idea. He stopped by the diner again, the same one from the night before. He spoke with the manager and asked if the girl and her dog ever came around. The manager nodded. She stops by sometimes, doesn't cause trouble, always polite, feeds the dog first. Never takes more than she needs. That evening, Daniels filled a brown paper bag with sandwiches, granola bars, and a clean bottle of water. He added a small flashlight and even included a pair of socks and dog treats. Then he drove to the park. He had no real plan, just a gut feeling. He found her where he guessed she might be. She was sitting alone, with Max resting his head on her lap. She looked up as he approached, her body tensing. It's just me, he said gently, holding up the bag. No tricks, just dinner. Lily didn't move at first. Then Max stood up and walked to Daniels, sniffing his boots and tail wagging. Slightly, Daniels reached down and scratched behind his ears. Can I sit? He asked. Lily nodded. He handed her the bag, and she opened it slowly, her eyes widening when she saw what was inside. Thank you, she whispered. Daniels sat beside her on the cold concrete. You're smart, Lily, smart and brave. But this isn't a life you should have to survive. She didn't answer. I won't force you into anything, he continued, but I'd like to help. No one takes Max away. That's a promise. She looked at him, searching for a lie in his eyes. She didn't find one. For the first time since she ran away, she didn't feel like she had to. It had been over 2 weeks since Officer Daniels brought Lily that second paper bag filled with food, dog treats, and warm socks. He had visited almost every other evening since then, never pushing too hard, just showing up. Sometimes he brought food, sometimes a blanket, sometimes he just sat quietly on the edge of the park bench while Lily drew in her notebook and Max dozed in the grass. At first, she barely spoke. But over time, the wall between them began to crack. It started with small things, a question about his job, a comment about the weather, a quiet laugh when Max chased a squirrel and tripped over his own feet. Daniels noticed her voice got stronger when she talked about Max. She always called him my protector or my hero. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in strokes of orange and gold, Daniels handed her a soft, brown journal. Thought you might want to write in something that's not falling apart, he said with a gentle smile. Lily took it carefully, as if afraid it might disappear. Thank you, she said. Then she looked at him and asked a question she hadn't dared ask anyone in a long time. Why are you helping me? Daniels looked down at his shoes for a moment before answering. My daughter would have been your age this year, he said quietly. She passed away when she was 5. Cancer. Lily's eyes softened. Her fingers curled around the edges of the journal. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. But that night, something shifted. The next day, Daniels decided it was time to act. He had been researching options behind the scenes, places that might allow both the girl and her dog, which was rare. He found only one possibility, a transitional home for girls run by a woman named Grace Porter, a former social worker who had once lived on the streets herself. Her program had strict rules, but also an open heart, and most importantly, she allowed pets. He arranged a visit without telling Lily too much. Just come meet someone, he said. No pressure. If you don't like it, we walk away. Lily agreed only because Max liked Daniels. If her dog trusted him, Maybe she could too. They met Grace in a small garden behind the home. She wore a red scarf and smelled like cinnamon and warm laundry. Max immediately liked her. He rested his head against her leg within minutes, and she rubbed his ears without hesitation. "He's a good boy," she said. "He's everything," Lily replied. Grace looked at her and said, "And you're everything to him." Grace gave them a tour. The house was warm, with bunk beds in shared rooms, but also a private guest room in the back, the only one with a dog bed in it. A soft gray rug, clean sheets, and a window that overlooked a tree. "This could be your space," Grace said. "No cages, no shelters, no one taking Max away. You stayed together, always." Lily didn't answer. Her heart was pounding. She hadn't had a door to close in almost a year. After the visit, she and Danielle sat on the curb outside. "What do you think?" he asked. She was quiet for a long time. Max leaned against her side. "Finally," she whispered, "I want to try." And just like that, her life began to turn. From a park bench and a blanket to a warm room and a new beginning. All because of one plate of leftovers and a man who didn't look away. Lily woke up the first morning in her new room unsure if it had all been a dream. She blinked against the soft morning light streaming through the window, then sat up slowly. Max was curled on the dog bed beside her, his tail thumping softly, as if he too was still adjusting to the quiet comfort. There was no city noise, no police sirens, no shouting in the alleyways, no chill biting through a torn blanket. Just birdsong, the smell of fresh coffee from the kitchen downstairs, and the distant hum of life happening in a house where she was welcome. She didn't rush downstairs. She stayed there for a while, sitting on the edge of the bed with her arms around Max. She was afraid to move too fast, as if everything might vanish if she blinked too hard. When she finally joined Grace in the kitchen, she was greeted with a plate of scrambled eggs and toast. Grace didn't ask questions, didn't stare, didn't mention anything about the night before. She just said, "There's peanut butter if Max wants some too," and pushed a small bowl toward the dog. After breakfast, Officer Daniels arrived. He didn't wear his uniform today, just jeans, a sweatshirt, and a soft expression that made him look more like a dad than a cop. He brought something with him, a worn leather notepad and a pen. "I thought maybe today, if you're up for it," he said gently, "you could tell me your story. Your way. I'll just write it down, not for anyone official, just for you. Or maybe for someone else like you, someday." Lily hesitated. Then slowly, she nodded. They sat in the backyard. Grace brought them lemonade, and Max stretched out on the grass. Daniels didn't press her. He let her start where she wanted. And surprisingly, she started not with the hard parts, not with the foster homes or the nights in the cold, but with the moment she found Max. He was hiding under a dumpster, she said, skinny and scared. Someone threw rocks at him. Daniels listened as she described how she lured the dog out with the only thing she had, a crust of bread from her pocket. How he didn't leave her side after that, how they walked from neighborhood to neighborhood, sometimes sleeping behind supermarkets, sometimes under the highway bridge. She talked about the kindness of strangers, the bus driver who let her ride for free in the rain, the old woman who left a sandwich on the bench without saying a word. She spoke about the hard days too, the ones where no one saw her, or worse, the ones where people looked and turned away. Daniels wrote without interrupting, letting her words fill the pages. Every now and then, he glanced at her face. She wasn't the same girl who asked for leftovers through a diner window. She was stronger now, and still growing. After an hour, she paused. "Is this going to help someone?" "I think so," Daniel said. "I think one day, someone who feels invisible is going to read this and realize they're not alone." That night, Lily placed the notepad under her pillow before going to sleep. It wasn't just paper, it was proof that her voice mattered, that her story had weight, and that even broken paths could lead to somewhere safe. And for the first time in months, she didn't fall asleep hungry or scared. She drifted off knowing that someone believed in her. Someone had listened and written it all down. It started with a quiet post. Officer Daniel sat at his desk late one evening, staring at the worn leather notepad that now carried Lily's story. He had spent hours writing it down in her words, just as she'd told it. He hadn't shared it with anyone, not Grace, not the department, not even his own wife, until that night. He opened his laptop, took a deep breath, and began to type. He changed her name, blurred the details that might lead someone to her, and kept Max's name the same. Somehow, that felt important. He posted it to a local community group online, titled simply, "A Girl, a Dog, and the Streets They Survived." He didn't expect much. Maybe a few likes, maybe 1 or 2 comments. But by the time he woke up the next morning, the post had over 3,000 shares. Hundreds of comments poured in: parents, teachers, students, retired veterans, and even other police officers. People were moved, some cried, some donated. Some offered jobs, dog food, therapy, even a used laptop someone's daughter no longer needed. But what shocked Daniels the most were the messages from other kids. Messages that said, "This is me," or "I ran away too," but no one listened. He showed the post to Grace, and she smiled softly. "The world wants to help more than we think," she said. "They just need someone to show them how." Daniels waited 2 days before telling Lily. They sat on the porch steps in the late afternoon sun, Max stretched out between them. He held out his phone. "I want to show you something," he said gently. Lily leaned closer, her brow furrowed. As she read the post, her eyes widened as she scrolled. Every comment, every kind word, every offer of help. "They're talking about me?" she asked, stunned. "They're talking about your strength," Daniels replied. "Your courage, your loyalty to Max, your drawings, your words. And yes, they're talking about you." Lily didn't say anything at first. Then she whispered, "No one ever saw me before. They see you now," he said. "And more importantly, they care." In the following days, packages began arriving at Grace's house. Carefully wrapped sketchbooks, sets of colored pencils, warm jackets, dog toys, and notes from people Lily had never met. One note read, "You are the bravest girl in the world. Your story made me cry. Never give up." Grace sat with her that night and said, "You've lit a fire in people's hearts. Not just because you survived, but because you never let go of Max. You reminded people what love looks like when it has nothing left but loyalty." Meanwhile, a local news station picked up the story. They asked for an interview, and at first, Lily said no. Cameras scared her, attention made her nervous. But Grace gave her a quiet smile and said, "You don't have to show your face, just your voice." So, Lily agreed. They recorded her sitting on the same porch steps, her back to the camera, Max's head resting on her lap. She read a few lines from the notebook Daniels had helped her write. Lines like, "Some nights were so quiet, I wondered if the world forgot me, but Max never did." And then one person didn't either. The story aired on the evening news. It reached not just their city, but people in neighboring towns and even other states. Donations flooded in for the shelter. One woman offered to fund Lily's education for a full year. A small publishing company asked if they could help her turn her journal into a children's book. Lily looked at Grace and Daniels with wide, uncertain eyes. "How is this real?" Grace hugged her gently. "Because your story mattered, Lily. And now the world knows it too." The story had gone further than anyone expected. Within a week of the news segment airing, Lily's story reached not only surrounding cities but even caught the attention of a national morning show producer. Grace declined most of the big offers on Lily's behalf. She wanted to protect her from being overwhelmed. The goal was never fame, only healing. But amidst the emails and phone calls, one message stood out. It came from an unfamiliar name, Claire Bennett, and was addressed to Grace. "I saw the story about the girl with the dog. I think I knew her years ago. Can we talk?" Grace was cautious. She had seen people try to claim children for the wrong reasons, but something about the message felt different, sincere. She arranged a quiet meeting at the shelter and didn't tell Lily right away. Claire arrived the next afternoon, wearing a soft red scarf and carrying a folder in her arms. She looked to be in her early 40s, with tired eyes but a gentle smile. When Grace met her at the door, Max, who usually barked at new visitors, simply wagged his tail and walked up to her like he recognized her scent. "He remembers me," Claire said, her voice trembling. Inside, Grace listened as Claire shared her story. She had once been Lily's neighbor when Lily was very small, just 5 or 6 years old. She lived across the hall from Lily's parents in a low-income apartment building. "After the fire," Claire said, "I was told she had no surviving relatives. I tried to ask where she was taken, but the system shut me out. I didn't have legal rights, and then I moved away. I always wondered what happened to her." Grace studied her carefully. Why come forward now? Because when I saw her face on the news, even blurred, I knew it was her. The way she spoke, the dog, the drawings, it was Lily. Claire paused, voice thickening. And if there's any chance she remembers me, I'd like to be a part of her life again, even if it's just to say sorry for not finding her sooner. Grace decided to speak with Lily. That evening, Lily sat with Max by the fireplace, sketching a picture of their backyard tree. Grace sat beside her and gently said, "Someone came to visit today, a woman named Claire. She said she knew you when you were little, before your parents passed." Lily froze. She hadn't heard that name in years. Her pencil stopped moving. "She had a red scarf," Grace added, watching her closely. "She said you used to call her Miss Claire from next door." Lily blinked, memories returning like flashes, the warm laugh through thin apartment walls, a lady who used to braid her hair, a neighbor who always slipped her extra cookies when her parents fought. "She used to sing to me through the vent when I cried at night," Lily whispered. Grace smiled gently. "She'd like to see you, no pressure. Only if you want to." The next afternoon, Lily met Claire in the garden behind the house. They both stood silently at first. Then Claire stepped forward, tears in her eyes, and said, "You got so tall." Lily didn't speak. She looked at her for a long moment, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a tiny, faded photo, a picture she'd carried for years, of her as a child sitting between her parents and a blurry figure beside them. "Claire, I kept this," Lily said quietly. Claire covered her mouth, trying not to cry. And just like that, a piece of Lily's past found its way back into her future, not through force, but through care. The school hallway smelled like fresh pencils, floor wax, and something slightly burned from the cafeteria. For most kids, the sound of a bell meant routine. For Lily, it meant a new beginning. Grace walked beside her through the front doors of the small community school, her hand resting lightly on Lily's shoulder. Max walked confidently on his leash, tail wagging as if he knew he had a very important job to do. Stay close. Be calm. Protect his girl. Everyone in the office had heard of Lily. The principal, Ms. Roberts, smiled warmly when she arrived. "We're honored to have you, Lily," she said gently. "And yes, Max is welcome to wait in the office. We even got him a bed." Lily blinked in surprise. "He can stay here, really?" "He's family, isn't he?" the principal replied. "And besides, he might be the calmest boy in the whole school." Grace gave her a quick squeeze before heading out. "You've got this," she whispered. Lily was nervous. She hadn't been in school for over a year, and even before that, her time in classrooms had been scattered, inconsistent. She was worried she'd be behind, that people would look at her differently. She kept her head low as the office assistant led her to her classroom, but when she stepped inside, something unexpected happened. Her name was already on a desk, neatly written in purple marker on a folded card. Beside it sat a small notebook and a set of colored pencils. Taped to the top of the desk was a single line in bold letters. "Every story matters. Welcome, Lily." Her eyes stung a little. Her teacher, Mr. Hamilton, greeted her with an easy smile. "We were just getting started. Glad you could join us." He didn't ask where she'd come from or what her story was. He just made room for her. The students didn't stare. One girl even scooted her chair closer and whispered, "Your dog is cute." Another handed her a sticker shaped like a star. It was small, but it mattered. It told Lily she wasn't just tolerated, she was accepted. During art class, Lily drew quietly with her new pencils. Her hands moved confidently, sketching trees and cityscapes, a girl and her dog standing at the top of a hill. When the teacher passed by, he paused. "You've got a gift," he said. That afternoon, she returned to the office to find Max lying peacefully on the bed they'd given him, his head popping up the moment she entered. He trotted over, tail wagging, and nudged her hand as if to say, "How'd it go?" "We made it," she whispered into his fur. "We really made it." Weeks passed, and Lily began to thrive. She joined the art club. She wrote short poems in her journal. She helped Grace at the shelter after school and even assisted Claire at a nearby outreach center on weekends. For the first time in her life, she felt steady. She had a routine, a purpose, and people who saw her beyond her past. One day, Mr. Hamilton announced a special assignment. Students would share something about themselves at career day, something they had overcome, learned, or dreamed about. Lily froze when she heard it. But as the day drew closer, she began to write. It wasn't easy. She erased a lot, crossed out words, started over. But when she finally read it aloud in front of her class, her voice steady, every person listened, she ended with, I used to think being invisible was safer. But it turns out, being seen, truly seen, is what saved me. The room went silent. Then came the applause. And from the back of the room, Officer Daniels stood near the door, Max at his feet, both of them watching her with quiet pride. 2 years passed. Seasons came and went, and with each one, Lily grew. She wasn't the same girl who had knocked on a diner window asking for leftovers. She was taller now, stronger in both body and spirit. She laughed more easily. She made eye contact. She started to dream again. Her drawings had become something more than a hobby. They turned into stories. Pages of words and pictures stitched together with memories and hope. She wrote about life on the streets, the nights under bridges, the strangers who changed everything, and the dog who never left her side. The first book she ever created was called The Girl and the Tail That Never Stopped Wagging. Grace helped her publish a few handmade copies through a local arts program. What they didn't expect was the reaction. One teacher cried after reading it. A bookstore owner asked if she could display it. And one local journalist called it the most honest book I've ever held. She was invited to speak at a youth conference, something she never imagined doing. Grace drove her there, and Max rode in the back seat with his head resting between the front seats, as always. When they arrived, the auditorium lights made Lily's hands tremble, but Max stayed close, sitting beside her as she took the stage. The room was filled with students, parents, teachers, even law enforcement officers from other towns. She stood at the microphone, glanced down at the paper in her hand, and took a deep breath. My name is Lily, she began, her voice clear and strong. I used to live in places most people don't look, behind stores, under bridges, I thought. My story didn't matter. I thought my life didn't matter. She looked at Max, then at the audience. But someone looked. Someone didn't turn away. And that changed everything. She told them about the cold nights, the drawings in a stained notebook, the moment she met Officer Daniels, and how one paper bag of food opened a door that led to healing. She spoke of Grace, of Claire, of her first day at school, and how terrifying and beautiful it was to be seen. I didn't just get rescued, she said. I got a chance, a voice, and now, maybe, I can be that chance for someone else. When she finished, the entire room rose to their feet. Officer Daniels was in the front row, tears in his eyes. He wasn't in uniform today. He hadn't worn one in months. He had finally retired, trading in his badge for something softer, more personal. He now volunteered full-time at Grace's center, helping other kids like Lily. Kids with shadows in their eyes and stories they were afraid to tell. After the speech, a boy from the crowd walked up to Lily. He looked about 10, with scuffed shoes and eyes too old for his age. He didn't say much. Just handed her a drawing, a stick figure girl with a dog beside her, and whispered, "Thank you." Lily knelt down and hugged him. "You matter." She whispered back, "Don't forget that." That night, back home, Lily curled up in bed with Max at her side. Her room was still the same, fairy lights strung across the window, sketchbooks piled on the desk, and a dog bed that Max almost never used because he preferred the blanket at her feet. She pulled out her newest journal and began to write. Dear future me, remember the park bench. Remember the cold nights. Remember how it felt to be invisible, and how love made you visible again. And never stop telling the truth, even when it's hard. Because someone out there needs to hear it. As she wrote, Max let out a soft sigh. In his sleep, his tail giving a gentle thump. They were safe now. Not just surviving, but living. And they had changed more than their own story. They had changed lives. Forever.